Yeah.
Porting down. Yeah. So yeah, there's tons of cool stuff. Let's change gears then into I mean, I'm just excited about all this. I know there's a lot of red tape with the government and actually getting boots on the ground in there to explore and verify through excavation these things that we're seeing on new technology. You know, the new technology is great with the ground penetrating radar and able to see stuff underground with these using different types of waves. And speaking of which, there's a lot of other technology for waves and other cool stuff going on. What was this interview? Did you guys? I haven't finished watching it yet. This just
Oh,
dropped
yeah.
a couple hours ago, about
I'd
8 hours
start
ago.
at 9 minutes and 20 seconds and just play like 5 minutes of it, Jeremy. There's some great
This one right
parts.
here, right?
Yep.
9 minutes, you said?
Yes. 9 to, yeah. But just play from 9 minutes. Play a few of it, and it gets good.
All right, let me. I gotta share audio, so let me represent this. There it is.
They discuss specifically the patents, and then Sal discloses some information that has not been public before, as he states that he didn't sign an NDA on it. And I think you specifically, Mr. Reese, are going to appreciate it.
Awesome. Let's check it out.
A great man, a man that shall be remembered by history, for he deserves to be remembered by history. He is a man of great integrity. I was able to present. I went to the blackboard. I would, forget this dry erase board and stuff. To the blackboard, the piece of chalk in my mouth. Yeah, actually, I held it in my mouth for a little while. But anyway, in my hand, I actually went to the blackboard, put down Maxwell's equations, the 4 equations, 4 unknown. So again, heaviside version of Maxwell's equations. And from there, I was able to
pause that
derive
again, Jeremy.
what is understood as the Pais effect. Once he saw
a key fact that he just states is the 4 known Maxwell equations. Thus, there must and obviously are more equations of Maxwell that are also known, but only to after you just like sign an NDA probably or something like that.
I know from my college education, I did Griffiths and Jeffermenko both. I got both of them for electromagnetism. So if people are familiar with those two textbooks on this is what they teach in the colleges, and they say that the 4 Maxwell's equations, they teach you the differential and the integral form of them. There are 2 different forms. One uses the gradient operators and vector multiplication, like the cross and dot products, right? And the other one uses integrals over spaces, so like flux equations. But they all rely on something called the continuity equation in order for them to all make sense. And that's like there's no that says the continuity equation says that there's no extra charge or energies from anywhere else coming in or out of the equation. It's just the same the same amount of energy going through the surface on one. The amount of energy that went into a surface on one side is the same amount that's coming in out of that loop on the other side. And it's this J term, which is like a loop integral around the current, where all the current's going through in any of the Maxwell's equations.
But obviously, also a lot of people would just point at Maxwell and forget like Heaviside did a really important reinterpretation of Maxwell's formulas in like 1870s, and so I think that's also, it could be more that these are Heaviside equations as well.
Yeah, but you have to look at the whole where Maxwell got all this stuff from, because one of the equations of Maxwell's equations is Faraday's law, right?
Right.
One of them's Ampere's law. So all these guys, John Faraday and Ampere, the French guy, all these dudes were messing around with electricity in the 1700s and figured this shit out first. And they just kind of wrote down their interpretation of this all. And then Maxwell came along and said, well, if we just, kind of say everything's this vector fields, and we use this formalism, the formalism of vector fields, then we kind of get
eventually
around this problem. And then that led to like tensor, tensor calculus, because it's like, oh, well, there's these things called tensors where each vector is there's a vector at every point in the equation, and it's a different value at every point, right? That's kind of like so that led to a lot of the calculus was essential for like building all this framework, like the understanding the differentials in space and the relation between space and time, because it's relativistic what's going on with the charges, and how moving a charge through space creates a magnetic field just by simply just transporting the charge. It's a relativistic effect. So there's definitely, like he said, it goes back to 1895. Yeah, so this is like understanding Maxwell's equations has gotten us a lot of engineering. We do a lot of our, all our engineers that currently work for all these companies are building stuff with that math.
So
right? It works.
I watched these two AIs discuss Maxwell's equations and free energy the other day, and it blew my mind when they brought up that part of Maxwell's missing equations was that he fully believed in what they called the ether then, and in a couple minutes here, Sal Pais calls it like quantum something, some new technical term, but says they're essentially the same. But the two AIs were saying that the key part of Maxwell's whole system was connecting electric fields and magnetism together through the ether, and that he was using the ether and had equations with the ether. Sorry, kind of choked on my words there, but it's very
right. Well, this is also like, it was, everyone kind of took the ether for granted, I feel like, until the 20th century, and then really particularly with the Michelson-Morley experiment, kind of just throwing ether out of the equations and pretending that we just have enough answers with relativity. But that's also led to quantum physics, nanophysics, all these ideas that are saying that physics isn't a unified theory. We cannot have a unified theory of physics without ether. I feel like that's kind of problematic.
And what they replaced with dark energy and dark matter. It's all
right, because
the
it's the
same
thing.
Yeah, it's another term for it. All right, I'll shut up, and you want to play a little bit more, Jeremy?
Well, another thing I'll talk about that is worth mentioning is something called the retarded time. And the retarded time is...
I had a retarded time last night. No, I'm just kidding.
in the heavy side Feynman formula, this is like basically if you have things moving at the speed of light, how do you plot the field from them, because they're moving so fast. So if you have charges that are moving really, really fast, then it gets really complicated trying to plot where they actually are, because by the time the signal of what that charge reaches the observer, it's changed position already, So, and that position change and the time it takes for that, it's like we're just seeing the light from the sun 8 minutes ago, so we're on 8-minute retarded time. That's basically how it goes. But anyways, yeah,
there we are.
Asking this, but you're just answering it. Keep going. Keep
The
going.
third arch in the triarchy of sentience. Remember, the first two arches really are based on, let's say, unlimited computing power coupled with vector databases. So we're talking about in such a way that the computer or the AI agent no longer has the ability, or rather restricted ability, to hallucinate. But the third arch culminates in what I think would be the transition from a regular AI agent to possibly an artificial general intelligence agent with adaptive prompt, targeted prompt engineering. Quite possibly singularity level could be achieved. But anyway, I'm not going to drive it there. What I will drive it at is, if the AI agent is able to generate an original concept, preferably in physics, then can be experimentally verified, validated against known data. That particular AI agent, in my opinion, has if not developed, achieved a certain level of sentience. So I do believe AGI at that particular level is considerable. AGI status.
So you're not
Again,
allowed
an
to
original
use,
physical concept.
Oh,
you're
I
not
think the
allowed
video
to use
jumped ahead of
AI
it, Jeremy.
because you think like China's going to steal the secrets because the AI is learning, or just more because of its can become sentient, or both?
You know, he was really getting into. I jumped ahead of time. That's what I did. Yeah, you're right.
Okay.
Let's go back to this stuff is wild right here.
How many years we're on Earth in the air or in the water?
Even as a private citizen, because of EQ, I could not answer that. We're not
I
here
thought I had
to
a big enough
educate
question.
nor enlighten the enemy.
Okay.
Ashton, you and I have seen certain papers, have understood certain things. Just because we have not seen levitating craft in some unknown, unforeseen hangar, does not mean we do not understand the physics. Correct?
Oh, hey, absolutely. Look, I'm just an investigator and a journalist. You got to respect that I'm just playing the game here. I'm just doing what I got to do. Like, you are the respected Navy engineer. You should not say anything that would, harm your NDA. And my job is to come up with questions that push the boundary to the limit. So, a couple more. How many years behind the military do you think the public is technologically?
Yeah, this
right
was the good question.
People
right?
say
Yeah.
oh, the military's
Right?
secrets advanced beyond the public. What is your opinion? How, if you had to give it like a number of decades, what would you say?
Put it this way. If any enemy out there has some crazy notion to invade, to attack, to come out of the blue sky and do something harmful to us, I would please ask them, for their own sake and that of their mothers, to please do not take such steps. It'll be quick. It'll be very dirty. And you'll never do it again.
Like,
Well,
what?
that's exactly pretty much what I expected.
Yeah. So
let me ask.
that's interesting because the skeptic in me is like saying, well, is there proof of this? Do we really have that? And or is this just a bluff on our part, like a psychological operation to tell, just to bluff the enemy into being like, you better not dare,
Right?
But
The body language,
he
though.
also
The
talks
body
about
language.
he can't directly say anything about the technologies and stuff, but he kind of drops some hints, because what do they talk about? Like right after this, they get into, he talks about gamma rays and directed energy, right? And
Yes,
that, my friend, is where we get into real territory. Yeah. I mean, could take it interpret it however you want, man. I'm saying a lot of people are gonna
those EM, right? The weapons, and then it's like it kind of verifies, goes along with Eric Hecker's like story, experience, and research, as well as Dutch Sense's in tracking these things on the radar and stuff. It's interesting, right?
Well, there's this thing, and I'll probably get banned for talk. This is probably one of the reasons my channel's so shadow banned, is because we know about classified stuff, and we're not afraid to just put it out there and talk about it openly on the stream.
Right, but it doesn't exist. So
right. No, well, it doesn't officially, especially if you go and read the official articles on these things. So here's the Wikipedia page on what you can look up for the official very bad science, as they call it. Of course, none of this is real, right? It couldn't be. It couldn't possibly be that, in order to get the H-bomb reaction to work in the H-bombs, they needed to make a gamma ray mirror. And if you can make a gamma ray mirror, you can make a gamma ray laser, because how do you make a laser? You take your lasing material and you put mirrors on both ends, and you put a little a dot for the light to escape, and all the light trapped in between the two mirrors goes into phase from quantum mechanics, right? And so that's what they call lasing, or light amplification by the stimulated emission of radiation. So you're stimulating that cavity in order to emit radiation in a phased output, right? So the same idea in this hafnium controversy, right, is that, well, where did all the hafnium go, and what is it about this hafnium? Especially there's one isomer of hafnium which is like slightly almost like it actually like will jump up and down on the periodic table. Like it will jump up from hafnium to like the next element and then jump back down, which is really interesting, because very similar to what Bob Lazar talked about with element 115 jumping up to element 116 and back down again. You know, I always thought that idea was out there and crazy, but it turns out, yeah, there are these things called nuclear isomers, and hafnium was one of them that they were working on back in the, 1997. Apparently this Jason advisory group took testimony about these triggered nuclear isomers, and the Jason Defense Advisory Group was disbanded. They started taking this whole group apart shortly after that. This used to be, the Jasons used to be like the top scientific advisors for DARPA and the military back in the day, What? And they knew all. If you want, to really read about the real classified stuff, look into the Jasons and the Jason group, because those scientists worked on the cream of the crop, on this deep technology dive stuff. I don't care about what Dark Journalist thinks about mystery schools and all that nonsense. I watched all his stuff, but he doesn't understand or know the physics and the physics community and the community that's really based around all this stuff. I do.
Sal might have mentioned that group or hinted towards that group as being the one that he had the interview with about his patents.
Oh yeah. This is knowing all this stuff behind the scenes. You can connect a lot more dots than Sal would like you to, and then the people that he works for would like you to be able to connect. Because yeah, this is the where these, because a lot of those people are still alive from the Jason group, right? They didn't just they disbanded the whole group, and they lost the federal grant and the funding and all that stuff, right? But those scientists, a lot of them are still alive. They didn't just go away, right? And
they just went private.
Well, there's a number of them that like you wouldn't know about these guys. You know about Hal Puthoff and Eric Davis, and those guys are pretty well out there, and especially now with the whole, they wrote all the DIRD Defense Intelligence Reference documents, the debriefings, for the Air Force that came out in the ATIP disclosures, apparently, right? So all that stuff, it's like we said, that was a controlled leak. That was a controlled leak. That was a controlled, they let a little bit of stuff out of the bag, but not too much. And I don't know if that's to send us and the Chinese and the Russians down a whole rabbit hole, thinking they have.
Right. So I suspect and heavily feel that the whole Tic Tac gimbal thing was the exact same, and like then what is that? And probably it is the same technology. If the MH370 thing was it, like if those videos are real and that orbs that technology, that's 10 years later down the road of these same sort of craft drone plasma things. It adds a layer of mystery to it for sure. You're muted, Jeremy.
Here again is the hafnium controversy article, and you can read about the Jason group and a lot of that stuff on that and dig into that a little deeper. But the whole issue with sorry, you had just mentioned this, and now I got thrown off looking at math equations and stuff This was we were just talking about this, and I want to look this up. Not the Jason's group, not the hafnium controversy thing. Sorry, what were you? Do you remember what you just mentioned? I was just gonna go look this up, and now I can't. It slipped the tongue. I have to go rewind the stream. And
right. What did we just mention? So Sal talked, not that group.
I feel like I just got mind erased and neuralized, dude. Like
you're talking about Lazar and the Jason group, and
no, we're talking about Sal and this something about Sal's patents.
Patents and what the year that they had the conversations with this group. Potentially, it's like right at 10 minutes into the interview that
I know I wanted to mention Franklin R. Mead. You know, there's a number of guys that worked on some of this stuff that are, you know, directly connected. Franklin R. Mead worked with Lake Marabou on all the so Franklin R. Mead working with Lake Marabou back in the Reagan defense program on all the laser propulsion and laser technology stuff, because they were trying to figure out what to do with all these high-powered Navy lasers that they built, and these guys were running a lot of the experiments down there. And then T.D. Barnes, right, who I interviewed on my channel, who's the head program manager out at Area 51 during the years Bob Lazar claims to have worked there, said he never met Bob, never knew him, never worked out there. Said like the team of the guys that all worked out there were hand selected from a specific profile. They all like boats and they all like dogs. Okay. So they all, or something. I don't know if it was boats and dogs. So like they bought them a whole lake property. They bought out all the houses around the lake. All 52 houses were owned by the Area 51. So the whole neighborhood is literally
Los Alamos, basically.
It's basically, yeah. Well, it's everybody knew each other. So it's like Bob wasn't in that group. He said Bob didn't work out there on anything. Like this was a very select group that they picked, and we all like boats, and we all lived together on a big lake where we all had boats on our lake. And that's the way they hooked us up, so that we had, you know, you have all the friends and all the fun you ever want. Why are you going to talk to anybody else outside? And no one's allowed in that neighborhood. And the guy on the very end is all whacking hut houses, you know, for security, with cameras.
A very small group, and we ain't in it.
Yeah, exactly. He said, I would know. This is how it operated. And you know, he's the guy that actually worked out there on all the stuff. He's, you know, talks about how I would love to interview him again in person, man. He's a wealth of knowledge and stuff. But his whole opinion on the Tic Tac, and I asked him this, is that the Tic Tac is these lasers technology that they're spoofing, so they can project anything. You know, if they can project the ball of light, you just stretch that out, and what do you have? A pill, right?
Right. Well, that's the thing, is that could be like the first or second generation of it. And what is laser when it's condensed into a ball of plasma? And if they're combining a bunch of these lasers, are they able to now create the balls of plasma? And from that, once you have a bunch of the balls of plasma, are you able to actually warp space-time? Apparently Sal and Ashton believe so. And it was very, very telling. And I've brought this point up myself several times lately when talking about Sal, but for him to actually say it today in the interview of how the Navy also has the Air Force and is the top of the line of the technology development.
Yes, and they're the ones who built all the lasers. They're U.S. Naval Research Labs are the ones that
in the Navy is the Q division. This is the OdySee Gauss.
Q division is still classified from the 1960s. That's how.
But you go back even to the 40s and 50s. Like in the 50s, you have degaussing of the boats for sonar, right? And I feel like this is where we get into the electromagnetic, like the level of what we were defining at the time. I mean, the Germans in World War II were defining gravity as the level of Gauss, right? That was something that it was like the measurement the magnetic strength in Gauss, right? And so this is what they were using to degauss boats, which is what the Philadelphia experiment is supposed to be all about. What they were saying that they were just degaussing boats for magnetizing them so they didn't pick up by sonar, but really they're phase shifting by using electromagnetic spin pulse. And this is all just by having equal and opposite Gauss rating. So they have to constantly regauss the boats, which means having each part of the boat be ionically charged.
That's what I picked up from the Philadelphia experiment, right? Like that it was supposed to be two giant generators of opposite rotating magnetic fields.
With neodymium and some ceramic virgin magnets, right? And then aluminum, nickel, cobalt connected to two electromagnetic generators, right?
Well,
and so these were like 2,500 kilowatt diesel bus generators that they had running. So yeah, I think, and then it's supposed to get up to like 5,000 Gauss. So if they can continually pulse the 5,000 Gauss, then they can remove the spin state, or they can rearrange the spin state, and this would allow for the object to be in multiple phase shift.
The next level. Yes, that's, but people don't understand where we're at and where the aircraft that we have, the top secret aircraft where we're currently building, have the last generation of that, which is just blasting the air so that it supercavitates, so that you can fly through it at hypersonic. This is how you get past like
laser burn a vacuum, you vacuum right in front of the craft, so you're going into the vacuum, so there's no drag on the air.
Yes,
because you're burning the air off.
And that was reported on. Brett Tingley did this awesome article on the War Zone back in 2020, and this was completely overshadowed by a whole bunch of other nonsense.
Go back up for a second there. Show that those there, right there. Look at this right here. And so I think this black spot in the front of the craft is kind of what we're talking about, is where the nose diameter is. There's some sort of a laser weapon, but it's really being used just to burn off the oxygen to make a vacuum. That's what we're...
Well, you see, the interesting thing is that with the torpedoes is they have like a little nozzle in the front of the torpedo, on the supercavitating torpedoes, and it like blasts some of the backdraft forward like a little bit, and that apparently is enough to do it. And on the supercavitating torpedoes for water, you know. And I just wonder what the hell that would do to like a school of fish or dolphins, or
why there's pods of whales washing up dead and entire freaking
they're testing these things long range, and it just like oh my god. And even being near that, it's like dynamite fishing, just knock you out from the concussion.
Right, so this is a huge point here, the Byfield Brown effect on the B2, and that it was Dave, I believe, and Ashton that discussed this, and Dave brought up the point that it was, oh my God, what the Northrop Grumman, right, the ones that make B2, had bought a bunch of Brown's work and patents, his private patents, right before, like in the 80s or something, right before making the B2, which, well, that's just kind of confirms it, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. They were they built two versions of the B2. There was the B2 Spirit bomber, and then there was the B2 Advanced Technology bomber. So a couple of them got the special. Were equipped with the special equipment. Apparently, they don't all have it. Some of them are just a little bit slow and rugged to take off. But again, all those flying wing type craft came from the Horton brothers and the Nazis. That was Operation Paperclip took a lot of that.
Yeah,
info
the Horton
right.
229.
Well,
I think
it's the B2, and then it's the TR3B. So is that the third generation one that goes into or out?
Well, now you're talking B2 is Northrop Grumman. TR stands for Teledyne Ryan, right? So Teledyne Ryan was in San Diego, and the TR3A we know was a real craft, right? That was the
Horton Ho, right? Pulled by screen for a second. Go to the Horton Ho 229. Horton Here's a Ho. Totally different Dr. Seuss book. Horton and then Ho. There you go. Right there. That was
this
it.
thing with the double jet engines in the front.
This is from the Wagon Fabric, and they made at least 3 of them. This is definitely where the B2 design comes from. I think there's pretty much no question when you look at the design of the craft. It's just literally
they realized that this was a new adaptation with the internal intake jet engine. Right. This was very novel in the 1940s, and that's what they used to break the sound barrier with Chuck Yeager in 47 as well.
Right.
But they realized
the brothers were doing a flying wing in the 30s, and the more you go back, the more it's like occultists in Austria that were like part of the Vril, Hyperborean, like doing seances because they didn't have radio yet, and they were really interested in building a flying wing since like probably the 20s and 30s, right? And so the culmination that actually was used was the Horton Ho, but
look at the friggin' wheel on the front of that landing gear.
Totally.
They must have. Yeah, there's a reason that was engineered that large, right?
Oh yeah,
gotta be.
Where Horton ended up after the war, right? Argentina.
Really? Oh, another Argentina. That brings up another point we need to discuss in the year of 2025 disclosure, and that Argentina just released its Nazi files supposedly after talking with Trump about it and claiming that evidence that Adolf Hitler flew to Spain, then took a U-boat to Argentina and lived there till his 70s, where he had 2 daughters that apparently also had children, so that there's actually literal descendants of Adolf running around in Argentina to this day.
Oh, my Uncle Adolf lives in the mountains in Argentina. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of German towns down in Argentina.
Yeah. El Boson is where Horton ended up. Let me show you a couple of things really quickly. Go back to my page for 1 second, just for 30 seconds. I got the Horton H1. So here's the H1 from 33. Okay, so 1933, and it looks like a paper airplane, but you can see
like a glider, right?
It's freaking great. It's a 1-wing glider. It can run without an engine. It is a glider, but it also has an engine, which is what's cool about it. Then, if you go on further, the H1B. So the H1B continued on. This is what led to the 229 eventually. But then you look at some of the variants, and then you've got like this is the Argentina 34. Okay, so this was designed in Argentina in El Boson above Bariloche, which is where they have the Atomic Research Center and the they have like a hydroelectric water plant, and they have their first fusion reactor, right? So it
looks like another one's mating with it. Jesus.
This is from 1930, 1950, 1960, 1957. Is the 37. Now look at the front of it. Remember what you were talking about a minute ago?
Yeah.
Bingo. There's the nose cone.
Right on the front of one of these 1-wing planes. And they continued on. Here's the 38.
So
these are all Argentina. 41.
That metal spike.
You can see the Argentina flag on the side of it.
They're all in Argentina. Wow.
Yeah, they made some cool stuff. And so people were always saying, hey, the Nike Pole 9 with the Rotax engine. There's all kinds of places around the world where UFO sightings are huge. And Argentina El Boson, one of the biggest ones. And it's interesting because like they have plenty of reason for that.
Yeah, and like apparently like the areas where the Germans were well known for out in the mountains is where a lot of the UFO sightings are seen, specifically one town where there's like a factory or something.
They have
and also with energy.
Machining, in fact, yeah, how do they get the machining out there to do all this? They must have.
So you bring submarines, you bring stuff to the coast, you bring it through the lakes, and at the lakes, that's the thing. A lot of these sightings are crafts flying out of the lake, out of Lake Pucón and out of Lake Bariloche, right? There's even weird like islands that move around in some of these lakes. What's the Rio Tranquilo? I think is another one.
You should have your screen up because you know how to spell these places, and you can give us a tour.
And I just got to say, shout out Angela Merkel as #1 suspect of Hitler's like daughter or granddaughter, because like I completely forgot like when there was the Q rumors. One of the Q rumors was like Angela Merkel is Hitler's daughter or something like that. And it's like, what? Could it be? Is our reality that much of kabuki theater? And like, what? Anyways, I'm shut.
Merkel has a property in Paraguay right next to San Bernardino. San Bernardino, Paraguay, I'll pull that up as well, is a place where the Nazis were, and there's no extradition in Paraguay. It's also George Bush and Nestle are their only neighbors, you know what I mean, that have like huge oil reserves. But then there's the Iguazu power plant, the hydroelectric, Itapu Dam. I'll pull all this up in a second. And then El Boson, Argentina, UFOs. Let me see that really quickly. UFO sightings in Argentina. Boom, right here. So let's just here. Let me just show you. Okay. So first off, this is let me show you the El Boson. This is where UFOs seem to come out of. Notice the pyramid-like kind of mountains, kind of a little chiller than your average, but you see some interesting points right there.
Okay,
lines, right? Let me go back to how far do I have to go here? Pucón. Here's Pucón. Pucón. This is the symbol for Pucón, which it's literally really a water underneath a volcano. It's what they're trying to. I'm seeing some. I'm seeing a lot. I've seen a Mario Brothers mushroom from like.
No, it's a triangle craft with waves coming out the back.
Do you see the craft?
Right? Oh, right? No doubt, triangle craft with waves out the back.
It's a wing. It's a wing. Okay, and then so if you want to go through, here's a bunch of sightings in Argentina and Portugal and etc. here. But I was going to go to the Argentina 1995 incident in Bariloche, where dudes were like just trying to, have like a ski resort, and all of a sudden they started seeing crazy, like this is the kind of lights that they saw as they're flying over Argentina, over Bariloche's lake, over by Island Aryan, the Aryan Island, and also the Slavonic mountains, the Montagna Slavonia. But there's just so many things that you start to see these. Remember what you were talking about earlier, these kinds of line-shaped crafts, right? A lot of the things that like Nuremberg event, a lot of Nuremberg event crafts that they see in Argentina. And then, Puerto Rio Tranquilo. So this is a place where it's a very interesting place. It's like the deepest lake in South America. It's it's not the biggest because Lake Titicaca, but also UFOs in Lake Titicaca you got to look into too, because Lake Titicaca, which is a great name for a lake, by the way, but they have these weird it's supposed to be
Titicaca.
It's supposed to be like the throat chakra or something like that, or is that Shasta? It's the sacral chakra of the earth, like, or one of those, like the hippies had these things about it, and it's cool. I walked around it once. It took like 7 days to walk around this lake. It's freaking huge. This is here. Let me go in there for you. You can see that big old lake right there. So it's no slouch of a lake. It's pretty big, and in this area you have the Island of the Sun. That's the way. There's the Island of the Sun is an island in the center of Lake Titicaca. So I went and I stayed on the island of Titicaca's Island of the Sun right there. And there's all these like human sacrifice pads. This is where they have those giant rocks. Isla del Sol, Titicaca, megalithic. Let's just see if that pulls up anything real quick. Ancient ruins under the sacred lake.
Supposedly a pyramid even under the lake.
Yeah, well, it's also got like portals, or at very least tunnels that connect different places. For like some people say you can get from Rio Tranquilo to Titicaca, which is like thousands of miles away. But they've suggested, people have these stories that go back like 1,000 years of people that swim, get stuck in a tunnel, and then all of a sudden they like swim out of the tunnel and they're in a place with like a portal, like 1,000 miles away in the other lake, right? And a lot of Swiss people been buying land here and in Rio Tranquilo. It's just Rio Tranquilo is really beautiful because glacial and super clean. Titicaca is getting cleaner, and you see a lot of like quinoa growing in the hills, but it's still, it looks like a feudal village. There's like peasants that live there all the time, but there's tons of UFO sightings there as well. So, I mean, you could also do the Atacama Desert. The Atacama Desert's kind of like the Roswell, and there's no ozone above Chile, which is weird for a lot of reasons, but it helps with their giant observatories. So they're able to see with a lot less interference, which is really interesting. But how do you end up without an ozone? It's like some nuclear war happened there thousands of years ago or something. It's crazy. I mean, for a people obsessed with a flying frisbee disc that looks like a spider.
Right? And why have so many, like the UFOs used to always be discs and cigar shape, and now it's like it's always orbs or triangles and supposedly jellies. I don't know about that one, but
UFOs over Iguazu Falls. Similar events occurred in 1911, then in 1950s, the 1890s.
Again.
Oh well, I'm just reading about it really quick. I don't think I have any good pictures to share with you really, but just I can at least show you the Itaipu Dam. Okay, so Itaipu Dam is a hydroelectric power plant that 40 to 60% of South America gets all of its power. The entire continent gets all of its power from this one hydroelectric dam. It is fierce. It is a huge dam, and they literally took a chunk of Paraguay away just so that it could belong to Argentina, because Argentina did most of the work to build that. But guess why? Who was in charge of Argentina at the time? Freemasons with Perón and their connection to the Nazis, which is interesting because the Nazis have been connected with the Vatican, and the Vatican betrayed them to work with the CIA. Pope Pius XIII. So they built this giant dam in South America with the help of Mercedes-Benz. This is how they found Eichmann, right? And this is the whole thing where they brought him to Israel for his show trial. But this whole area is the golden triangle of South America, because you have Paraguay, Brazil, Argentina, and even I think Uruguay. I don't know if Uruguay is quite on the same river path, but there's a point there where all of these places intersect, where all the borders are, and there's a river between them all. So the river's like out of bounds.
There seems to be a thread with people always say, oh well, there's no UFOs anywhere else in the world that we see except for like in the Americas. I mean, there's a couple cases in Brazil and Argentina, around Argentina actually.
Well, then the celestial phenomenon over Nuremberg. So there's just something about places the Germans have been too. Because look at these pictures of the 1560s, and they have, what do they have? They have these balls, and then they have balls that are stretched out into these cigars, and then the cigars are actually shooting balls out of the cigars. It's even more accurate or vivid or detailed than most of the things we're getting from Roswell or from UFO Disclosure today, because this is tying all of it together, right? It's crazy.
Sure, right? It's like it goes back so far back.
Well, I've always told people, like, if you're relying on the government in these hearings to bring you the truth or to tell you the truth, then
how's that been working out for you?
Yeah, it's not going to work out. That's not going to work out. Those people are freaking clueless. As we saw recently in the JFK hearings, the lady didn't even know Oliver Stone wasn't, Roger Stone. So,
yeah, you need new solutions. You can't use the old tactics to solve the problems that were the same tactics that made the problems.
The Pentagon, what was it? Information agent special or what? Like department? Like it's so insane that people have faith in government agents and information operation agents.
Yeah, it's so revealing that time after time it just comes out that all these people who are tasked with investigating the government turn out to be involved with the cover-ups and stuff, as we've done a lot on the Kennedy assassination, and I've been deep diving this and just absorbing everything I can on it. Also, maybe before we get into that, whatever happened to that Russian spy that was arrested in Florida with the radar kind of, he had a dish kind of gun that was in a backpack type of weapon. He was basically blasting people, Havana syndrome. And they had this car chase. They were going to pull him over, and this guy like ran, and they didn't know why he ran, but he had this backpack with all this stuff in it.
Oh, I can't believe this ended up
seen
on the
this.
news. This is crazy.
You never seen this or heard about this?
No,
No,